course, these are very difficult to get your hands on, Baz. The Premiership Cup in the SANFL.
Well, ever.
Yeah, it's amazing how people think they're easy to get. You know,
they think the AFL one's easy as well. They think any Premiership's easy, which is couldn't be further
not
from
that
the truth.
easy. We thought we'd get the CEO who's been good enough to give a bit of his time because they are under pressure. Grand final, Norwood over North by a point last weekend. James Fantasia, congratulations, mate.
Thanks, Phil and Barry. Thanks for having us on. But isn't it just a beautiful looking cup?
It is.
It is when you've got your hands on it.
It really does look great.
Yeah. Yep.
And I guess when you grow up, watching, admiring the SANFL and what it's offered, I think it has another layer of, something quite special about it.
Mate, we all saw the game. 27,500 people. They're down to the wire. First quarter, the rain's kind of not there, and North look like they're on top of you a little bit. Then the rain comes, and Norwood's ability to will themselves back into the game. At different times, it looked like North might get away from them, a couple of goals in the third quarter. Then Norwood kept willing themselves back. It's almost the Jade Rawlings ethos that he brought to the group this year. We'll just hang around. If we get a chance, we're going to take it. It kind of played out that way. It was a courageous win by the boys.
Oh, spot on, Phil. You couldn't have described it any better. I think they've been doing that most of the year, to be honest. Even early games where we were just getting beaten, it was more about this very young group, how they would shape up and listening to the instruction and very defensively driven, of course, and that's very much part of Twig's, Jade Rawlings, folks, we call him Twig. He doesn't like being called Jade. So, but Twig had this, very clear picture as to how he wanted that style of play to be brought into the group, and I think they bought into it really well, and you could just see the development in it right through the year. So, in some ways, it wasn't a surprise, but I think no doubt conditions helped us at that time. You talked about a bit of a swing in momentum. And we know how good North Adelaide have been all year. I mean, their ability to transition the ball is as good as anyone in the league, and that's something you always worry about because they score quickly. So, it was looking a little bit frightening from our point of view that first 7 or 8 minutes, but they steadied, and I think by about halfway through the second quarter, I kind of felt like we'd kind of worked our way back in, and it was more about that arm wrestle again. So,
I mean, most people always want to talk about the grand final, but when you talk to the footy people, they often say the prelim's the big game. If you can get past the prelim. Now, you had to meet the Adelaide Crows in that one, and I know you'd beaten them 3 times during the year, and they'd beaten you once by quite a big margin, but most people felt coming into the game, I think all the tipsters would have put their money on the Crows.
Yeah, no doubt. We would have gone in underdogs, but as I said, there was a resolve with the group, and to be honest, I think we didn't believe in that performance 2 weeks earlier. It was very much outside of everything that we'd done for the year. And unfortunately, it was our first final. It wasn't a good look. And we had 3 players that had come back into the side from long-term injuries, who were definitely going to be better for the run. But what happened on that day, I think absolute credit went to Adelaide. Their ferociousness around the ball, and again, their ability to move it, was exceptional. They were really in their game, and when sometimes a game flows a certain way, it can actually make you look a little bit worse than you actually are, and you're chasing all day, and by the end of the day, you just kind of you're completely gone, and so there was this belief that we just had to take steps. So Glenelg the next week, who were an outstanding group, have been the pace setters, let's say, for the last 2 years. We knew that was going to be another big game, so. To just come off the loss and be able to, reset yourself, I thought that was really important. And again, the style of game, I felt we got on top of that game pretty early, and were able to keep our kind of foot on the throat, if you like. Yeah. So there was a build, there was a natural build, and then you come off a win, going back into playing Adelaide, and look, there was no doubt we didn't go in thinking this was going to be a done deal. We knew it was going to be a fight to the end, and that's what it ended up being. Unfortunately for us, they got away with those first 2 goals, exactly what had happened, the 2 weeks earlier. It looked like they were going to set this scene again where they were dominating the middle, just slick movement, but Panos got the ball, did a magical turn and kicks our first one for the day, and it was like he just had let the steam out of, what we could do, and then from there it was an arm wrestle.
James, you talked about you went in with some underdone players, which you did, he was one of them.
Yeah.
Panos was one of them. He is such an important player for Norwood, isn't he? I mean, that day that he came back, he looked like me. He ran around like me. I thought, oh, mate, Norwood made an error here. They didn't really make an error. Had to play him in that game. You had to play those guys. Who were the other couple? Was Rogan one of them?
Our captain, had been out for 6 weeks, and young Mitch Cott had come in, and he'd been out for 7 weeks.
Yeah.
But look, I think, Barry, you're right. But one of the things you really look at, and you look at Matt Panos, and I've had the good fortune to know Matt since he was a young man. Actually, before he got into footy, basically, and he's been an incredible professional in terms of how he goes about his business. He is a professional in every sense. So when he puts his hand up to play, he's actually fit. Yeah. But is he match fit? And that's a slightly different piece to it. But literally every game, bar that one, he's had an impact on those return games. So significant. He's won games for us.
Well, he played an impact,
and he helped again on that the big stage. But can I just come back to that point that Phil made about that prelim? I think it's spot on, Phil, because just to win it, there was an euphoria around the group, and they were on it wasn't an overconfidence high. It was you try and get that swell, a bit of a belief, and I thought the club itself, players included, coaches, I thought they handled the week incredibly well because I guess we embraced it, and They just had it all before them, rather than panic about it or get overconfident about it. So it was a beautiful 2 weeks of being involved in a footy club when things go well, and to win it by a point is, it just adds another take to it.
James, one of the things that impressed me after the grand final, I've heard a few Norwood guys speak. Boyd was one of them. Boyd spoke, I think, on the day, but I heard him.
Yeah.
But they all mentioned the coach. It's a very rare thing that the players, they'll come out and they'll thank North Adelaide and they'll say, you boys were pretty good and everything's terrific. Thanks to all my mates, the players. Yeah. But you rarely hear the players talk about the coach. And I've heard at least 3 at different stages mention Rawlings and how good he's been and how he's built relationships with the players.
Well, that's
important.
I think that's the word there. He's as good as anyone I've seen build relationships, and I think that comes because he has a great care about the people, the person, the individual, but he's got another knack of being able to drive a standard that goes with it. So I love you, I'm here to help you, but let's get here. It's got that, and it's probably not as crude as that. He's got a much real genuine feel about him. So, I don't think we can underestimate how much of a significant impact the coach has had in his last 2 years with that group, because, again, he's been very clear about how he wanted the game to be played, and he hasn't deviated. And there's some there now that have had 2 years of it, and there's some that were able to buy into it very quickly. Yeah. But the other significant parts too, he's been quite active, and because he's been involved in footy for so long, he's had a great network, and he's been responsible to help bring some really important players into the club. A couple of Tasmanian boys, young Tom Donnelly, Braden Lowe, and Braden's getting a lot of attention from AFL clubs. So, their impact has been significant. And for 2 young men to come in at this level of footy, to adapt and to become part of, a really solid team, that speaks spades for the coach. And, we've got a few stories like that. So I think Twiggs had a significant impact. And not only that, I see he's bringing the coaches, our coaching group, you can see them growing in it as well. So it's got a great way of touching all the different parts of your footy club, and that's really important. So, we've been lucky to have him on board, and he's made some significant sacrifices. People don't realise sometimes, the backstories that go with all these things. He's been living in Adelaide without his wife and 2 young children, and his step-children and his daughters. It's quite a big family, and they're in different parts of Australia, and he's got a stepson in America. So, juggling all of that, you sometimes, you just see them at the front, and they're very good at what they do, but there's a lot of personal sacrifice and drive that comes with that, and genuine belief in what they're doing. So it's pretty special.
I had a chance, I was standing on the ground, have a chance to watch, and I'm a big believer in, there's 4 key things for any club to be successful, be it basketball, be it footy, being around it, is the CEO, the footy manager, the coach, and the president. If those four are all engaged and on the same page, then the club is really well placed for success. Yeah. I watched after the game Jade Rawlings and the players get around him. Then I saw the press, Paul come out and literally jumped into his arms. I thought, geez, that'd be a great photo. That'd be a great photo to show that Jade, the president, the footy manager and yourself are all pushing in the same direction. Yeah. And you sit on the outside, you go, this is what I talk to clubs a lot about. And it doesn't mean that there aren't other people that play an integral part in it, but those four are pivotal. Yeah, and it looked like with the group that was a part of it. Then previously along the journey, Jade's not only, you touched on, brought some really good players in, he's moved a few out that weren't team orientated. The toughest thing as a coach is to go, don't have a good feel about these guys and let's move on. Jade seemed to be able to do that in his first year and then he's moulded this group. So kind of go, this group's going to be pretty special for a period of time, I reckon. Oh,
look, they're just brilliant insights, Phil. Where do you get all that stuff from, mate? You've been around a bit, have you? No.
Just old, mate.
Yeah. But you hit the nail on the head, and that's very true. And look, for example, we would meet every those four people you've mentioned: president, coach, director, CEO, and we actually bring in our footy services manager as well. And we would meet 8 o'clock every Monday, and we just talk a little review on the weekend and what do we need to do to help. You know, where's this? This is more a very high level. It's not. It's not about the operation itself. It's just identifying areas that we can either add some more support to, be aware of an issue that we might need to work with. It's a lot of welfare. You're often, and that's welfare from the playing group right through to your support staff and right through. So, look, I agree. I think they're really important parts. But there's so much that goes to winning a premiership, but also to be successful in a club. And there's not one quarter of a club or any piece of a club that isn't more significant than another, in a sense. But when it all kind of is heading in that one direction, it is...
It's much easier. There's no current to go against.
It certainly makes life certainly easier.
Well, it's cliche. I mean, it's an old cliche, but it's so true that if you're strong off the park, you're a chance on the park. And that's been said for 100 years, but it's a fact. It is an absolute fact. I've played with clubs that have a fantastic playing group, but very shoddy up here, or presidents and whatever. That affects that. And Norwood seemed to have it right.
Yeah. Well, I think the other part, Barry, is that we've lost them. I was involved with a club that North Adelaide, who we beat on the weekend or weekend before. We know what it's like to have to when you lose, and that's certainly part of, I think, your growth. And this has been a lot more in a sense because we've experienced that recently. And so I always think it's important that you learn the lessons on both ends of that scale. And I'd like to think that we're quite humble in our victory. That doesn't mean we're not going to celebrate it ourselves, internally and enjoy all the, I guess, the satisfaction that it can bring. But we're very cognizant too. We've got some incredible competitors, and we're very respectful of what they provide. And to be honest, we're trying to learn all the time. And how do we stay in the hunt? And so my hats go off to the clubs, but certainly to North Adelaide. I'd like to acknowledge that. Jacob Surgeon is an outstanding coach. He's got his own style. And he's had a pretty good mentor working alongside him. Phil, that I've seen you in that role, and you talk about attracting good people. You could see that club is a significant club, and I'd like to acknowledge that because they've just been outstanding all year.
Yeah, James, you've been nothing but classy, and so's the club, mate. You've done a ripping job. But I've got a little bit of a wheelbarrow on pushing at the moment, so I'm interested because you've been around a long time. We talked about this last week on the show. The losing team that has to stay out there for the whole proceedings. Now we know that that's kind of been the tradition. And you've sat on the side where you've been the loser, you've sat on the side where you've been the winner. Surely there's a dignified way of saying we use North Adelaide as the example in this one, could have been the Sydney Swans on the weekend against Geelong, where you're there for a moment and acknowledge that, but then they're allowed to leave the ground. Because really, it's the most painful thing, being out on the ground.
No,
so
it's tough.
Is there time to have a look at that and say, they wave to the crowd as they walk off, they acknowledge that they participated, but now the moment is about Norwood, or the moment is about Geelong. There is no need for them to be paid anymore.
Really interesting thinking, Phil, because just even as you're bringing that up, one of the things I think what I'd love to see is the teams, because the team that wins, it's naturally going to react and celebrate amongst themselves. But wouldn't it be good if we could then get the two teams, give them that moment, bring the losing team can come around, but then the next piece of it is both teams coming together, and because you're always going to acknowledge and do that as a collective. And have the opportunity for the captain, the winning captain, to speak, to say thank you to them, and vice versa. And then they boys could leave before you start all the all the other next parts. It makes perfect sense, and I think it could be done in a really dignified, sportsman-like manner. And to be honest, I think it'd be a great way for people for both teams to acknowledge each other
it's a win-win in a difficult situation. That's what I'm saying. Hey,
that's good thinking, Phil. You're outside.
Think about something. Fantastic, mate. Really happy for you. Obviously disappointed that North don't get the win, but great for you in the club. And it was a ripper that it was Matty Panos that had to be anyone to kick the winning goal. He's the guy you want to do it from. Just a great club man. James Fantasia, our special guest. Norwood Footy Club, number 31 on the premiership in the SANFL. Well done to Norwood. Stay with us.